and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. On this segment, I'm going to start off by showing you an instrument that I think you will never have seen, and you probably will never see one again. It's very, very unusual. It is a piccolo, and one of the things that I love about it, and I walked into a music store, it has been stained in some way to be red and gold. Have you ever seen a piccolo like this? Now, I'm going to twist it around so you can see the colors. Maybe I had it in the other direction. I don't remember for sure when I tried it once before. But this instrument is all red. You can see that red on the top, can't you? It's all red. This is the mouthpiece. This is the lip plate over the mouthpiece. The flutes and the flutes and the piccolos have them. Other instruments do not have them. You can see like a little red tint as I kind of move it a little, and I'm going to move it in the other direction. I think.
You're showing it to this camera, Pat.
Pardon?
You're showing it to this camera over here.
Oh, okay. Now let me take, you can see the red, the whole back is red, and you can see the pads and the keys. The whole back of the instrument is a solid red. And then as I move it around, it's going to appear like these keys are all silver. These keys are not silver, they're gold. Due to the reflection of the light, you may not be able to see it. It's going to look like silver to you, but I'm hoping that I can catch some gold here so you can see that this instrument is completely red and gold. And that you can see some of the pads. It's a very unusual instrument. It's not a professional instrument. I think it's probably a student model, but student models can be very nice instruments. Let me hold it up. You can see the whole back of this is red. You're seeing the back of the lip plate. It's all red. The mouthpiece, you get a good chance to see the red. The mouthpiece, the lip plate, the actual place where you blow across that lip plate is very obvious, and it's red. The whole thing is red. But when you get to the keys, I think you can get a little bit of gold coloring if you look at the bottom where I'm kind of waving my hand. Those keys are all gold, bright gold. I went into the music store with my twin sister, and I looked at it, and I says, that is beautiful. She'd never seen one like that. She's a musician herself. She'd never seen anything like that either. And I had thought, gee, I'd like to come back and buy it, because it was a little expensive, of course. But, things get going, and I get busy and so forth, and so I didn't get back to it, but what she did was she just went back and bought it and gave it to me as a gift. Let me hold it like this. Gold and red, a whole gold and red piccolo. It shines. Now, it doesn't shine so much on television from what I've seen in the monitor, but it does shine. And you see a little place where you put your hand. When you finger it, you need to have a place to put your finger, and it will rest on this little device right here. They all have them. All the piccolos have them. And it's there that you rest, and you've got your little gold key. That's a gold key. Just a very unusual instrument. I like to collect them because I love instruments, but I like to collect unusual ones too that are different in their color, but it plays just like any other piccolo. You know, it's a good little piccolo. It's just a beautiful little piccolo, one that I never expected to see. Now, I'm going to compare it. This is my Germeintart. This is a Gemeinhardt piccolo. It's a very nice one. It's made in Germany, and it's a silver plate. Most of the flutes and piccolos are all silver plate, you know, and this is the way that you hold it. And it's a very nice playing instrument, and you have the lip plate practically right in front of you. You could see it. I don't know if you can see it or not. But at any rate, this is a regular piccolo. They're exactly the same. I mean, put out by different companies. This is a Gemeinhardt, and this is a student model. But they are beautiful. And I've heard of gold flutes. I've never seen one. I've wanted gold-tinted flutes, not real gold, but gold-tinted flutes. And I've wanted to get one. I haven't been able to find one. I know a company that supposedly produces them, but I've had trouble contacting that company. And I've also heard of clarinets and other instruments that are made out of plastics. A lot of the clarinets are made out of plastics. And of course, the recorders are as well. And you can get clarinets of different colors. So I've heard, but I've never seen one other than the black, which is what most people get. But when you get to other things like, for example, the recorders, like this. These are plastics. This is blue. It's a nice shade of blue. Blue's not my favorite color, but this is a nice shade of blue. And then, of course, orange. You can get those in any color. And the thing is, you can also get them in color mixes where you have like a pink top and a green bottom or something like that. You know, and here's a red one. So with the plastics, you can get different colors. And I notice, I've been on the air for over 10 years now, and people love to see the different colors. So when I saw this piccolo, and it was all red in the back and all gold with where the key and other things that you use on the instrument itself, I thought, wow, this is something that's worth having. And I went, and eventually, of course, I did get it. My sister got it for me. So it's interesting to see what exists in terms of the colors that exist for people who are playing instruments. Now, I know that kids like instruments that are bright and shiny and new, but sometimes the bright and shiny and new aren't the best instruments to have. So a lot of the times when I've taught students, what happens is the parents will say, we want to buy a child this or that or the other, and they want me to go to the music store and pick out the best instrument for them. And for the most part, I've had success in doing that. If I go into a store and say, I teach this and that, and I've got a student whose parents are going to buy an instrument from you, but they want me to pick it out, there's no question. They allow me to pick it out. It's not a problem at all. Now, I want to mention about the cases. This is what's known as a hard case. And the Gemeinhardt, this is its case. And what's good about a hard case is the fact that it's soft in the inside. And if I hold it in a certain way, you may be able to see it has been specially made for the Gemeinhardt, and it has an indentation in where the parts go. So it's fitted, and it's got that hard case, and that's the safest place where you could keep an instrument. Now, this one doesn't have a handle. And I'm just going to close it. But this case, which is also a hard case, goes to the red piccolo. And it does have a handle. And I like cases that have handles rather than those that don't. Some of these smaller instruments don't have handles because I suppose they think you could just stick them in your pocket practically, put them in a briefcase or something. You don't really need to have a handle. But I think it's nice if you do have a handle because sometimes you're carrying more than one and it's good to have a handle. This one is a hard case. And if you look in the inside, where the color is dark, you may not be able to see it, but there are indentations where various parts of the instrument goes, and it's fitted for them. So it's hard on the outside and very protective and very soft in the inside. So the instrument is against a soft background, not a hard background, even though the outside is hard. And this closes, it has a special latch to do that with. And there you have it. That's a piccolo case. This is also a piccolo case. And the hard cases are the best. Now, there are some instruments that actually have come with a kind of a plastic cover. This actually is one of the covers that I have for my LMI recorders, and that's not very protective. It's a little more protective than the cheesy plastic thing that I showed you last time, you know. And there are a lot of cases that you can get that are padded. And the padded cases, even though they may not be strictly speaking hard cover, they have a canvas cover, they can be very protective too. So how do you know? Well, I have a number of old instruments, and the older instruments that I have, they change shape, not because anything's happened to them, but as designers design instruments. And as the years go by, the older instruments get redesigned slightly, so some of the older cases don't fit anymore. And then cases do fall apart, even the hard ones, and if it's not in great shape, you wouldn't want to use it because it's going to hurt rather than help the instrument. I had a student who lost a flute. She had a hard case on it, and she lost it. She went to school on a snowy day. They didn't call off school, so she had a band rehearsal, so she took her flute. And she stopped and put it in the snow, just laid it down while she was waiting for her bus to come. And lo and behold, she got on the bus and forgot to pick up the flute. So there it was in the snow. And the snow came, and there was quite a good deal of it. And she suddenly realized she didn't have her flute, but she didn't remember where she put it either. No one could find it. And she went to one of my lessons I had scheduled for her, and she was crying, and her mother was angry. How could you lose a flute? It was expensive and all of that. It was a brand new flute. And a principal drove by and saw this thing sticking out of the snow, part of the case. And he stopped it, and he figured, well, a student must have lost their lunchbox or something, and he picked it up, and it was the flute. Now, he wouldn't have had any idea who that flute belonged to, because several students from several schools gathered at that particular place to catch the bus, so it just wasn't just one, you know, it wasn't just one school. But inside, she did the wise thing. She had her name and her telephone number and her address. So the principal called her parents, and she was able to get her flute back. And the flute was fine. It wasn't damaged in the snow at all, but the reason it wasn't damaged is that she had a hard case, so it was very well protected. Now, it could have been completely lost if somebody else had found it and not tried to return it, but as far as the condition of the flute was concerned, it was in good shape. And so I prefer the hard shapes, especially designed and having indentations in it so the instruments will fit in. And I prefer that. I really do prefer that to any other kind of case. Padded cases made out of cloth, but they've got a lot of padding, can be good, and I use them for some of my older saxophones. If the cases have fallen apart, don't use them, they're not good to use. Get a new case, and you can get it so that it fits. You know, the old cases don't fit a newer instrument. If you have a newer instrument and you have an older case, sometimes it doesn't quite fit. So you get a newer padded case, and it's fine. But the just cheap plastic stuff I don't like. And I think every instrument deserves to have a case. Now, what I've done sometimes is I've made my own. If I have an instrument and the case is awful, I won't put it in. But sometimes I use, you know, just some kind of case that I can kind of make myself, or I group them together. For example, if I have several recorders, I can use those little things that for paper toweling that you use in your kitchen, the rollers. They're about the right size to make a case out for recorders if you want to keep them standing up. Now, I have a lot of recorders. I have well over 300 instruments in my collection. A lot of them are recorders, but a lot of them are other types of instruments as well. And what I like to do for the recorders and penny whistles and sassoto flutes, I like to have them standing up, not laying on the side on top of each other where they're rubbing up against each other, but each one in its individual little slot standing up. And I think it's more protected that way. So sometimes I end up by making my own cases. But if you do have an instrument and it's new, or even if it's used, it needs to be protected. Don't put it on a table where you think it's going to roll off, or people put things down on the table and don't realize it's there, so it has things heaped on top of it. Not very good. Don't put it near a register where you're going to have hot air. You need to keep it in room temperature, but you don't need to keep it by a furnace or by a stove or something that's going to give out heat. It might be too much for the instrument. It might dry the pads too much. Never leave an instrument in an attic where it is just blazingly hot in the summer and terribly, terribly cold in the winter. That can do a lot of damage to any kind of instrument. Even the electronic ones, it can do a lot of damage. Don't leave it on a porch. Don't leave it on a windowsill where the sun comes in, so you get maybe too much heat and maybe too much cold when the sun isn't coming in. And for pianos, and I know this is not always possible, for pianos, don't leave them next to an outside wall, because they're going to get some of the temperature from the outside unless you have awfully good insulation. And sometimes there's leakage and it's going to get cold air. It's much better to keep them in room temperature and keep them on an inside wall, and then they'd have a lot less damage to their strings. There is an art to taking care of instruments. If you take care of instruments the way that you should, then you go a long time. They'll last for years and years and years. I'm in my 80s, and I have instruments that are much older than I am. So they're certainly not new instruments very well. If you take care of them, always wipe them clean, keep them in room temperature. Don't let them get out in the snow and the ice and the rain. You have to have them protected. If you have to take them out in a hard case. And don't leave them in your car. I had one instrument that plays fairly well, but I was riding along with my brother and his kids, and they picked up an instrument. It was a song flute. And they flipped it over. "Hi, Auntie Pat, you can have this. We don't want it anymore. It doesn't play." And I thought to myself, why would it? I mean, it's been in a car, too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter, and it wouldn't play. It really wouldn't. But I didn't give up on it, and I would blow it a little bit and a little bit, and finally it started making squeaking noises, and then it would a little tiny sound, but that you could know that it was actually trying to produce a sound, not just a squeak. And I worked with it, and I worked with it, and finally just blew into it gently, and gradually it played. It got all of its notes back, but I would never leave an instrument in a car. If it's going to be hot or if it's going to be cold, it's just too damaging to do that. I wouldn't let anyone else play my instruments, except on a very rare occasion for a special reason. I wouldn't let anyone else play my instruments. If you have young children with instruments, don't pass them around. There's a sanitation issue, but even beyond that, it's just not good to be playing other people's instruments. Children get very careless as to what they do. They bang them around, they slap them down, and all of that. And so therefore, you have to be very careful. You have to teach your children, this is the way you treat an instrument. It'll last a long time. Treat it seriously. Don't treat it carelessly, especially the temperature has to be right, and you don't need to have it out in the rain. Now, I know we used to take our instruments out in the rain during football season, and when it was cold, because we were marching in parades and doing shows in football games. And, but we usually, most of us had 2 or 3 sets of instruments, and we brought the ones that would not be damaged so much or that would be easier to repair. And we covered them with plastic and whatever we could if the temperature was going to be bad or if it was going to be too windy and rainy. I really don't like to have instruments out when it's wet and terribly rainy and icy. It's just not good for them at all. They do respond to the care that they get, and if you take care of them, they will be all right for a long time. Well, I'm not going to go any further than this because if I get into something, then I'm not going to have time to finish it because our time is almost up. So I'll close it here, and I'll be bringing instruments in as time goes by. I do that every so often anyway because I have so many of them. I like to show them off to people who might not be able to see instruments like that because most people don't collect, and a lot of people don't have instruments that are unusual, and so therefore you'll be seeing them from time to time. So we'll continue, and I'm going to have a general review of music, how to play it, and this is a good time for a review. And we'll continue with that next time. So please join me next time.